For today's video, I'm very excited. Today we are going to do a build inside this beautiful Nouvolo Steck 2. I've been waiting for so long to do a real build inside this little puppy. But it's not going to be the most beautiful build. So this case is very versatile, and if I say versatile, I mean you can do whatever the heck you want. And therefore, I wanted to do a bunch of builds. A couple of videos, everything very individual. I don't want to group it into a single building video with 10 different use cases, otherwise nobody understands anything and neither do I. So this is why I am going to separate it. And for today, which is also like the first build on camera, we are going to do a rookie build. The standard stuff. The stuff you would do inside this case if you just got the case and nothing else in particular. There are drawbacks because of this, and we will get to them. We get immunity to them. So the first component, of course, the stack case with the regular mesh panels, which is also the only thing I would recommend, as long as you don't go with water cooling inside this puppy, because otherwise you will just, kill everything. It suffocates. Things need air. So for the case, the Nouvolo Steck 2, that's pretty damn easy. Then for the platform, we are going with Intel, and I'm doing this for a particular reason, because I wanted to make some real temperature tests inside of this puppy, and given how AMD or Ryzen 7000 works with that 95 degrees C, like, how should I say it, I want to die. Intel doesn't work that way, which is why I will just go with an Intel chip. And I chose the 12700K for many reasons. First off, it's hot, and I need something hot in here, and second, it's almost too hot for the cooler that I'm going to use, because we are going to go with an Noctua NH-L9x65, which is by far the maximum I have that will fit in here without being squished against that side panel. And I'm not sure if this works. We will see if this works. I'm not very confident that this works, but we will get to that. For the motherboard, we have something new that I have not used before, which we just got. It's an ASRock Z790M ITX Wi-Fi. It's basically the bare bones version of an ASRock Z790 motherboard. There is nothing really special about it, other than it's not very expensive, and I love ASRock for it. But it has everything we need. It has 2 RAM slots, it has an LGA 1700 slot, it has a PCIe slot. Okay, I didn't mess up here. The usual stuff, nothing extra. It's very budgety. Then coming to the one thing I'm not particularly happy about, and that's the GPU. I would have loved to use the Zotac 3080 Ti that we have, or a 4080, but I don't have a 4080 nor 4090. And the 3080 Ti from Zotac does not fit into this case by default. Now, if you really want to make it fit, it does fit. What you can do is take off the front or the back, install the GPU, and then place like the panel back on. That works. I did it. It works fine. However, for the second video about this case, I will still need to use the same GPU as I used in the first one, and what I'm going to modify about the case does not allow the Zotac to be in here anymore. For the 3070 from Gigabyte, the Vision one, however, it will work in both scenarios, which is why I need to go with this one. I would have loved to take something bigger, because a 13700K and a 3070, I mean, the numbers do match kinda, but other than that, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You could call this a productivity build. That would work, but certainly not for gaming. This wouldn't make any sense at all. This is way too overpowered for this. I mean, if you do like working stuff, even editing works with this. And this also. I mean, going from a 3070 up to a 3080 doesn't make that much more sense in Premiere Pro. So this would work for a productivity build. Hey, it has a purpose. It's a productivity build. Great. Then for the RAM, we are going with the same Kingston Fury DDR5 kit that I have been using in basically every Intel 13th gen build, because it's my only DDR5 set. So still 64 gigs of Kingston Fury and the usual SSD. And then a very important part about basically any ITX build, I hate SFX power supplies. Each and every one I have used so far was, I don't want to say garbage, but not particularly good. The Be Quiet one, I have no idea how it's called, the SFXL in fact, way too loud, and once that fan starts spinning, it's a nightmare. Exactly the same goes for the one from Corsair that we have. Horrible experience. They are just way too loud. Way too loud. And the only one that is not way too loud is this Seasonic, what is it, Focus SPX 750 that they sent like a year ago. And each and every time I do an ITX build, I just grab this one. It's by far the best I had so far. It doesn't make any noise at all. I think it's even like, it's not maybe not like semi-passive, but at low loads, zero noise. It's the best I had so far. And then as the last part, because the Nouvolo Steck V2 is a very special type of case where you cannot just fit normal like 25mm thick fans, I contacted Arctic and they sent along a whole bunch of their new P12s slim, what is like 15mm thick fans. You see, those are like tiny fans. And I'm very grateful for that. Thank you to Arctic for sending them over, because otherwise this wouldn't have been possible. You can slap 2 of them in the top, 2 of them in the bottom. That's max you can do. And considering how many 50mm fans are out there, I think those are like the best options. As of right now. Okay, I think everything is clear so far, so I guess it's time to start. ITX builds in general are like a love and hate relationship at the same time for me. On one side, I love the simplicity of it. Like, there is not a lot of things to connect at all, which is nice, which I do love or do appreciate at the very least. But then once you are done with the easy part, which is essentially just connecting all of the components of the motherboard, that experience is usually, I will say usually, followed by a lot of pain. But hey, that's not always the case. Maybe the Nouvolo Steck will be one of the easiest cases to work in. You know, you never know, you never know. SSD connected. Let's slap the brand new Intel chip in here. Oh yeah, I love how Intel is marketing like the whole sustainability thing, followed by, I would say, 95% air. This sums up European or worldwide like environmental protection acts and decisions, and this is make the package smaller or add something that makes sense. I also love the fact that Noctua, here it says this side must face the motherboard instead of, because other brands tend to write something along the line of this side up, what is up? Up in the sense of, what does up mean? Facing the motherboard, just, that makes sense. That's an approach that I can absolutely agree on. Ta-da! Doesn't get much easier than this, does it? Oh yes, mini ITX cases. You either love them or you hate them. And I hate that I love them. But it's one beautiful thing. Yeah, I will never understand why this bracket is shaped the way that it is shaped. Like, everything about it, because of this, like, this angle here, it looks like the power supply should be like sitting in it or hanging in it, twist it around, but it just doesn't. A, these holes here would not align, then it cannot hold onto the case, or B, it just doesn't make any sense, because otherwise you will also get into the trouble that your SSD bracket will not be like in the front of the case, but like here where it will be hitting the motherboard, which doesn't make any sense at all. So it looks like it should be oriented this way, but just, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why it is looking like that. No case I had until now looked like that. Yeah, and the only thing you really need to keep in mind when using this case is not to use any sort of cable extension. Just don't do this to yourself, and try to get rid of as much cable as possible as soon as possible. What I'm trying to do is push everything like behind the motherboard, so that I eliminate a lot of cable just by going that route. Because otherwise, later on, cable managing in such a small case is practically impossible, and this will look like shit. So we will bend the whole thing to the back and just pretend like it is not there. It's always these mini steps of pushing things into ITX cases that you produce these cracks, and it's, I love that, I hate that no, we are not getting aggressive over here. It's also funny that it's so packed in here that the screws for the motherboard that I'm just putting in are essentially just optional, because the motherboard keeps in place anyway, but I will still put them in, just, you know, to be complete. Wow, I got every single one in. Okay, let's see if I messed something up here. Yeah, I kinda did. I will never get that PSU cable in now. Yeah, that wasn't my smartest choice today. Yeah, let's take this one out. Cause okay, we can do this now in two different ways. First install the PSU, then the cables to the motherboard, or vice versa, or combine it like, which I will basically do now. The one thing you cannot do is connect or install the power supply, connect the cables to the motherboard, and then connect the cables to the PSU. That will just never work at all. No freaking chance. And oh, my nemesis, the 8-pin. Wow, that was easy. Okay, the last two are going to the GPU, and that's not really an issue, but I think, oh, routing this is, it's such a crappy thing in here. Yeah, I think I will need to stash all the cables like in between above the RAM essentially. I don't think I have any other option at all. But I also guess this would be like the perfect opportunity to use things like cable mods, cable replacements, where you get like the ideal length of cable, which is for this one, the 8-pin for the CPU, for example, it could be half as long and it would still fit perfectly fine. I just don't have any for this specific PSU or for this type of short size. So we will have to deal with this way, even if I don't particularly like it. However, what I do have is an army of zip ties. How will I get all of these cables in here? I think this is like the worst cable management job I have ever done. We have the CPU 8-pin that is just like going around here, and all of this is just keeping together with the zip tie, and it looks like it should fit with the side panel, but I'm really not so sure about this one. So yeah, cable managing inside of this puppy is horrendous, but it is expected to be that way. The problem that I have in this particular case is that the cables are extremely stiff, like really freaking stiff, which makes it very, very hard for me to twist them in any meaningful way, making them, you know, fit anywhere. If you would have like braided cables, that's easier to pull off, but in our case, we do not, which I just have to live with that. And I just hope that I can still close the side panel. We will see. I can just hope. But I kind of really get the feeling that my bracket is like not functioning properly, because even if I connect the main power cords right here, we still have like a lot of space in between the power cord and the place where the fan would go on. So I kind of get the feeling that this should really be reversed, and that would give the PSU like 3 centimeters of space upwards, which would be great. But in this case, it's, I don't know, I get the feeling that this is wrong. But the bracket doesn't fit the other way around. It does not fit. I tried everything. It just doesn't. I don't get why, but it doesn't. The one thing I almost forgot, power switch. Okay, GPU. That's like one of the easy steps here. GPU in. And yes, I intentionally removed that last, here you can see it, that last PCIe like bracket thingy, because my GPU is pushing it down. It's like, it shouldn't be doing that, but it does it, and it doesn't make it impossible to install. It's just, it doesn't feel very good, or it makes it really hard to get it into the slot. So I just removed it, because you can't see it anyway once everything is closed. Okay, this is done, this is done. Now the last part would be fans, which are the 4 little Arctic fans that we have, and thankfully all of them have that PWM PST connection. And during the review of this case, I found this neat little trick where I can squish fans by pressing it up slightly. Okay, I will not be doing that. So unfortunately, to install those fans, we still need to remove a bit too much of the case. I swear to God, no matter what you want to do inside of this puppy, you need to remove half the freaking case.
One eternity later.
Those would be exhausts, so if I'm not wrong, they should be orienting this way. Yes. boy, this is getting heavy. And I'm just looking at those PSU cables and I can already see what a mess this is going to be to close. This is an SFX, just SFX power supply. And although in the potential like spec sheet they say SFX or SFXL, do not do SFXL. You do not want to do SFXL in here. You're going to have a really bad time if you go that route. Don't do this to yourself. Okay, bottom fans installed, feet are back. Time for the top ones. And then actually the builds will be finished by then, which is great. Except for closing it off, which is not going to be great. Instead of doing the same mistake another 5 times, I'm going to position everything as it is supposed to be and then mount it immediately down before forgetting what goes where. First attempt. I'm learning from my mistakes. Okay, in theory, the build is now finished. I can close the side panel on the GPU side, which worked flawlessly, or which is now flawless. However, on this side, yeah, this is going to be a hard one. One thing I can do, which is really helpful, is connect all of those splitters, and I will only have to use like a single PWM header, which is nice. And all of those fans are drawing close to 0 amps anyway, so this is going to work very fine. I can stash it like right here next to the cooler. Yeah, that's just, oh my god, this is diabolic. I'm sorry, Nouvolo. I'm very sorry. Okay, but this power supply, this is what bothers me. I mean, it is a simple box, so it's not going to be easy anyway, no matter how I twist and turn it. But this... I don't know what that sound was, but it was not a good sound. I just have too much cable. Let's try to close it now. I'm just really unsure. Okay, it's closed. That was a bit easier than I expected. It's done. Let's have a closer look at this. This is definitely one hell of a beautiful build, and thanks to the fact that it doesn't have like glass side panels by default, you cannot even see the mess I created. Amazing. Great idea to put mesh panels on there. We did a bunch of benchmarks in the meantime, but not any game benchmarks. It's a 3070 and a 13700K. Everybody and his dog knows how this will perform. Okay in gaming at 1440p, but better at workload. Who would have thought? The GPU is 2 years old. No, what I was interested most in is how this performs temperature wise. And before I put together the build, I actually tested it off the outside of the case, just on the table, free air, to see how everything performs with the cooling solution that we used. Not very well. To give you some numbers, when letting every fan spin at 100% from the beginning and everything was reset to stock, so also like the maximum power duration PL1 whatever to 56 seconds, all bunch of settings are set back to normal. But what happened was that the CPU hit thermal throttle, so 100 degrees C, instantly, a second. It was amazing. It drew like 200 watts and then it dropped and dropped and dropped. 5 gigahertz, 4.8, 4.7, 4.6 on the P cores. On the E cores it was like 3.5, then 3.4 and so on. And in the very end it settled at 4.4 gigahertz on the P cores and 3.4 on the E cores at roughly 125 watts. This took like 3 minutes, I think, 4 minutes until it stagnated there. However, at this point it had somewhere around 90 to 95, 100 to 95 to 100 degrees C. That's not good. That's not good at all. The GPU was fine though. This one was sitting at 67 degrees C. That's very much okay. Now, after installing it in here, well, let's just say, what was I expecting? Of course it's going to be worse. After a couple of seconds, the clock speed dropped down 4.3, 4.2. It was devastating and just flatlined 100 degrees C. Like, no matter what I did, fan speed 100%, all of the fans, also the P12s, like the slim ones in the top and in the bottom. It was a nightmare. It was a mess. It was, I would say, about 10% worse than it was outside of the case. And of course, the wattage was dropping and dropping and dropping, and it fell way below 125 watts, which was at least sustainable outside of the case. Now it just wasn't. 115, 110 watts. It was a freaking nightmare. On the GPU side, we saw 75, so that's a plus of 8 degrees C. So now you know, having the GPU hidden behind this mesh adds 8 degrees C, which isn't particularly good, mind you. That's not very good. It is also not that bad. 75 on a 3070 Vision, 4K, MSAA, all-in firmware is still okay. That's still an okay temperature. At least it's not in the 90s, so everything is still fine. For the CPU, it's not fine. But that's not the fault of the case. The case took away, let's say, 10% performance, or it added 10% more heat. Depends on how you look at it, but it's not as bad. I just completely overestimated what the L9X65 is able to do. However, as I said before, I did this on purpose because this case has a lot of features that you can use without adding any additional extras to it, and we are going to use one of them. What I kind of forgot, and I will add it to the review, is if you squish a fan or a cooler, the fan of a cooler, against a mesh filter which isn't like 90% open, what you will create is noise. We had this in a bunch of cases. I think the last one was one of cube ore. I think what it was, the cube ore, the standing thing, where we had the Scythe Shuriken 2, and it did the same thing. Like, you can hear the fan of the cooler should be here. Try to take a listen. If I press it, so the closer the mesh is to the fan, the louder this thing gets. And listen now when I remove the panel. The noise is practically gone. The fan is now spinning at 30% fan speed, just like locked at 30% to not create too much noise while I'm talking here. But the presence of the mesh adds so much freaking noise. I completely forgot that this was a thing. But yes, it is a thing. And you need to keep that in mind. So if you're planning to do a build inside of this puppy, I would heavily advise not to go for an L9X65, except if you are doing what we are doing in the second video, because then everything will make sense. But use it as stock with like a triple slot GPU, because then you need to not do what we are going to do. But if you're using it in stock configuration without moving the motherboard plate, do not use a cooler that is that high. It will create additional noise. Plus, just don't pair it with a way overpowered CPU. At least now we know 13700K plus an L9X65 is not good. That doesn't work. Don't do it. Or at least it will heavily thermal throttle. So yeah, I mean, building inside of this puppy is one hell of a complicated thing, but everybody knew that this is a very complicated case. However, once you get into it and you disassemble it once or twice and then assemble it again, you will get the hang of it. It's not that complicated once you understand how the engineering guy at Nouvolo thinks. All of their cases are built essentially the same way. You just need to understand how they think, and then it's just like one flow, and you don't even check the manual anymore, or the manual. You just do, and it goes. So yeah, I'm very happy about the build, although it thermal throttled heavily, but I wanted this to happen, and you will see in the second video why I wanted this to happen, and we are going to have a good time, or at least I hope so. I hope we are going to have a better time in the next video. But until then, have a look at our attempt of hardline water cooling my editing rig. It was also a mess. But okay, thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.